Hello, it is I, your internet friend, Robert Gadarian. Today we're talking about server administration. This is an introduction, nothing more. Just knowing all of these terms and knowing that it's possible is a big chunk of the battle. But you're going to be solving very specific problems to your projects, and you're going to have to go deeper on certain things. But this is an overall look at what it is to administer a server. So I have a server that happens to be on an HP Z640, and I want to be an administrator. Well, I've already modified the sudoers list, which is, whoop, I can't even see it. I guess I'll have to become root. So sudo is generally to run one command. You can kind of cheese it by having a subshell of sudo bash. Not a great idea. I do this all the time. And you can see that I didn't have to add my password because I set myself to no password. And then vi sudo is the way you'd edit it because it opened vi. But we can also just look at the sudoers file. And you can see that everyone with sudo is great. And I'm a little surprised. It doesn't say no password for me. Okay, that's fine. And you can see who am I is such a fun command. It tells me that I'm root. Maybe I saved my password. I don't know. And vi sudo, again, we'll just edit this file. It's clearly the exact, oh, it's nano. Ha. Oh, it's the worst. Apparently my editor is not set up properly. But you can see it's the exact same file. And you can see that there's two groups. There's the sudo group and the admin group, both of which are set up to allow all commands from all logins, and that is nice. This is generally the setup. It's kind of cheesy, but if you need finer grained controls, it is there. But if you're just administrating a server for yourself, it's kind of fine. No. Man, I hate nano. What a disaster. Okay, so that's that. Sudo bash, or su, which is substitute user. Generally, you'd want to do dash, which will actually run the login shell. If you don't run the login shell, you might not have all the paths that you want set up. You might not have the libraries you want set up. This is the way you'd usually want to do it. This way, you need to use the root's password. So you actually have to know the root's password. Sudo, you can use your password, which is much more convenient. And that means that if you fire someone, you don't have to change the root password. You probably still should. Or if one user's account gets attacked, you can change that one user's password. You don't have to change the root password. And apparently I got it wrong. I don't actually know the root password on this machine. Now that I think about it, we can add SSH into that other machine that we had set up last time. Was it 92.4? 94.2. That's okay. And it's kind of the same thing. Hey, there we go. But this is not the username I want. Notice that I don't have, it pulled up Rob G. This is something I've been meaning to point out for a while. And that is because who am I? Well, who am I? Who am I? I'm Rob G. So I would actually want to say SSH Rob at this place, which will change my username. And then I can log in with, I believe it was CS2, which is a fantastic password. I'm having a bad time. There it is. And SU dash, then you can just say CS, and that is the root's password. And if I give my password, it's not going to work. But that's okay. We're happy with that. Back to this machine, because I think it's a little bit more interesting. I'm going to cheese it. You can see that the username changed. I don't actually know what shell it defaults to. It does default to bash, so that's nice. And we wanted to look at sudoers. We did, and we have access to do it. But let's also look at some log files. So I've installed the Apache web server, which is a very useful web server if you want to have a web server. And it logs to var log. And you can actually look at everything here. In the document, you can see that I look at the auth log. and that's there. And you can see that I have a bunch of logins and stuff. This is a very good thing to take a look at. Sometimes it'll just, if somebody's attacking you, this one will be flying by with them using default username and passwords for a bunch of machines. So if you have a Raspberry Pi, it defaults to username Pi, password Raspberry. Guess what? Some people stick these on the internet and don't change that. So some script kiddie is going to go along and just try it. And you'll see all of those entries in here. And it's actually a really good thing to keep an eye on. And it's kind of fun to see what people are trying. There is also dmessage. You can see there's a dmessage here. And I can actually type dmessage. This is all of the kernel messages. And it's actually a ring, and it's a very interesting thing. This is most of the system log entries. When you boot, this will fill up. And this is from this boot. It doesn't actually go from the last boot. And there's also a system log. This one is where you can see a lot of different system daemons. Let's see what's here. So I only have cron on this thing. That's not super interesting. But you can actually point a lot of things to log to your syslog. And syslog can be forwarded. And that's where it can be aggregated, and you can look at it in a website, which is very useful. Again, if you have 1,000 machines, this is a very useful thing to do. If you have a SIEM, which is SIEM, so that's a System Information and Event Management System, or Security Event Management System, it'll look at these and it'll do interesting aggregation for you. But all it's doing is looking at this. It's actually not magic. But the one that I can control really easily without looking like I'm a hacker is in Apache. So it actually, I'm going to delete this. Yeah, why not? And then I'm going to restart a daemon. So I wonder what would happen if I just refresh the page. I actually have the page here. Does it recreate that file? No. So I need to restart this Apache because it's got a stale file handle because I just deleted the access log. So I'm going to say service Apache 2 restart. And it'll restart Apache quietly. I can check on the status if I wanted to. And it says a bunch of good stuff. And it seems to be working. I should turn it off and see what it says if it's not running. That'd be more interesting. Let's stop it and find out. We can stop it. Very easy, and then I'll stop. And if I look at the status now, it says something differently. Looks like it's from here. Nope. Yeah. Fascinating. It's still actually, it says could not something stopped. So it's actually just giving me the log, which isn't that useful, but that's okay. I'm going to start it up again. And now I should have a access log. I do, which is nice. So I'm going to use tail-f. Lowercase f will just follow this file. If you do capital F, it'll follow it even if there is a new log turnover via the new log cron task, as we now know. Access log. So it's empty. That's not too surprising. And if I hit refresh on this web page, you'll see that this is my internal IP address, and I did fetch this / page. And if I refresh a bunch of times, you'll see it pop in every time. And you can see that it actually follows this file, which is quite a bit more useful than just catting access log, because then you just see the last, or just even just normal tail will just give you the last entry, which is fine, but it's much more useful to be able to see your daemon run and log live. And then you can still pass that through grep or whatever, because this is just a pipeline. So if you're looking for certain events, especially here, we actually have the status code. 500s mean that there is a server exception. So you might want to say tail-f on access log, and then grep for error 500. And then you'll only see things that are 500. So a problem, which is really, 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 really useful. And that's the kind of thing that we want to do if we're administrating a page. Generally, if you are administrating a web site, you'll have graphs of number of 500s per minute. And if you see a spike, that usually means that somebody's attacking you, or somebody pushed some bad code and it's horribly broken. But at least you can go look at the logs and see, did somebody just not initialize a variable, or is somebody attacking you? And you can work accordingly to what you're seeing. And yeah, other ways to restart daemons. If we look at etc init.d, If you're on a BSD machine, this is rc.d, which is the same thing, just different. You can see all of the services that you can start or not start. That should be starting. Apache is one of them. It's called Apache 2 for reasons. And I can actually do the same thing. I can actually use status here, and it's the same thing we saw before. How interesting is that? Stop, and now let's run status again. And it is stopped, which is fascinating. I really don't like this. I've mostly run this in BSD, so that I haven't actually really looked at this much. I'm going to start it again because I can. And that's it. That's how it can work. There's also a systemctl that you can run on these, which is the same thing but different. I showed that in using SSH in here, which is, I feel like the command is backwards. This is what I'd shown, but I don't actually want to stop SSH, but let's stop Apache. But we can actually know the name because it's still using that same name from here. And guess what? If we run status, it's going to say, oh, it's not loaded. Fascinating. Let's start it. Apache 2. Start. And service not found. Interesting. I haven't restarted this since I loaded in Apache, but that's interesting. In terms of scheduling tasks, which is I guess the last part that we're looking at here, I actually have a few things running on this all the time. And that is as my user. But I could actually look at, if I go to etc, I can look at my cron tab here. And this is just running cron tasks. That's not super interesting. We can look at the etc folder. Oh, we are actually in the etc folder, and ls-al, and we can see the cron entries in here. All the way to the top. Apparently, I should maybe use grep. It sounds like a great idea. And we can go into these folders so that we can see what's inside the daily folder. And here I actually have a bunch of stuff, including Apache. I wonder what's inside of Apache. Well, I can cat it if I want because I'm root. I can do whatever I want. And guess what? It's a shell script. And looks like it cleans caches. Okay, great. Every day it's going to clean some caches for me. That's very kind of it. But you can look at all this stuff. I highlighted log rotate because I think that's an interesting one and very important thing to know that you can rotate logs. And again, you might want to do it more or less often depending on how popular your server is. But I can also run things as a user. And this is really useful if you don't own the machine but still want things to run on boot. So cron tab -L will actually list it for me. And you can see that as I mentioned, I have a screen and I start up a bunch of stuff in that screen. Screen is actually really useful if you haven't seen it before. So I'm going to cat this. This is all the stuff that's going to start for me on boot. It's going to start a Minecraft server. I'm actually running nice hash on this, and I'm running a Telegram bot on this all at the same time. The Telegram bot is watching NiceHash and then sends me messages every 4 hours telling me how fast I'm hashing things. And from that, I can tell if it's broken or not. And screen-rd, I can actually connect to it because it's already running. And you can see, here's my Minecraft server. There you go. It's just running. This is a nice hash running. And you can see I have it in debug, so it's just spitting things out. And all of this stuff quite happily runs when I restart the machine. And that's because I have that @reboot set here. That is a very useful thing. As an example, in the document, I actually said email about system reboot. So you could actually send an email from a shell script, which is totally fine, and say, hey, I rebooted. Maybe you don't know about that. And you can get that as an email as a user. Very handy. And that's the real loose basics of system administration. Get used to the system you're on. I've spent a lot of time administering free BSD machines, so this Debian setup I don't really know a lot about, and get comfortable with what you're working on. Install a firewall. Linux has UFW, which is a very simple firewall, or you can install PF on a BSD machine. And then you can start protecting yourself, which is a very important thing to do too. Other things you might want to do is look at the daemons that are running and what ports they're listening on. Sockstat will tell you what sockets are. Oh, I don't have it installed. Hey, we can install something. That's how you install things. I'm really surprised that's not in here by default. That's shocking. And it's installing Python 2. This is great. This will tell us, is it netstat on here? What daemon is listening on what socket at all times. And then you can see what's listening for what and start protecting those ports or not. In terms of SSH, here we go. Not a lot listening here. I'm going to say -4. I'm really surprised. Not a lot listening on here. Oh, because I'm not root. Actually, sockstat -4. There we go. We should be able to see that Apache is listening on port 20, or SSH is listening on port 22. We should see on port 80 that our web server is listening, unless it's not running right now, in which case that's not great. I wonder, I can hit refresh on this page. Seems to be running. Don't see it in here. That's kind of terrifying. Star means that it's listening for incoming requests from anywhere. This means that it's only listening to incoming requests from the local host, which is very important to see who's listening to what from where. One of the interesting things is I mentioned you can send logs. You can actually send that over port 53, which is fine. And really concerned that I'm not seeing the listener for Apache. Know about that. And even with things like SSH, you can harden it. And Google like SSH hardening. Set the pre-shared keys so you can't log in with a password. You must have a pre-shared key, which is how you hopefully using Git, because then you can type a password to unlock your key, and then that key is what's sent over the wire, not your password. And then people can't guess your password because you're not sending it. They have to try to guess your key, which is much harder. There's a lot here that you can do. Look at best practices for your system and use your brain. You're a smart person. You're actively trying to learn about managing servers. Look into hardening X system or hardening X daemon. Google those things. Make yourself know what is important and what's not important. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. Thank you for listening, and I hope you're having a great day.